Welcome to the 2016 Seasonal Agricultural Workers Survey webinar. This webinar will guide you on how to fill out this year's survey. Before we move on, let's talk about the importance of your participation. Please tell us how the agricultural employment looks like at the ground level so we can provide the U.S. Department of Labor with the most accurate information possible. We hired the University of Washington to conduct the survey and collect data. We at ESD will analyze those survey results. Any information you provide to ESD or the University of Washington is voluntary, confidential, and will not be shared, except under the rare circumstances as required by law. If you are selected, the University of Washington will contact you with the options for completing the survey either by internet, by phone, or by text. The University of Washington will send out more information to you, including the survey's website address and their contact information. For the webinar, we created a fictional example. Let's say I am a seasonal worker who picked cherries in July 2016. Please note this survey is also interested in seasonal workers who picked apples. The format of the survey may be different for each mode, as it is offered via phone, web, and text. The survey's first question asks, since October 2015, was there any time that you worked as a seasonal or temporary farm worker picking cherries? Because I picked cherries in July 2016, I would respond yes. If not, it would be no to question 2. If you did not pick cherries or apples at any point during the past season, you would be done with the survey. This question is interested in how many different employers I picked cherries for. ESD uses this information throughout the rest of the survey. Let's say I picked cherries for 3 different employers, but I was actually hired 4 different times. I had picked cherries for the same employer at 2 different times. In this case, I would respond 3 because that is the number of unique employers. In the past season, I was paid by the lug, that's a piece rate, and by the hour. So my answer is both by piece and by the hour. This is a multi-part question that asks about piece rates. First, how many employers paid you by the piece? 2 of my employers paid me by the lug, that is piece rate, so my answer is 2. The next 2 parts are interested in the lowest and highest amounts I was paid to pick by the piece, considering all the employers that I worked for. For this example, the lowest amount I was paid per lug was $5.50 by one of my employers, and another employer paid me the highest amount per lug, $6. The last part of the question covers hourly earnings guaranteed. Hourly guaranteed earnings means that regardless of how much I picked, I was guaranteed a minimum hourly wage. At the farm I worked, I was guaranteed $12.69 an hour, so I would respond $12.69. This question covers hourly rates. How many employers paid you by the hour? For the example, I was paid by the hour at one of them. Because I was only paid by the hour for one employer, the next question asks, what is your hourly rate? I was paid $14 an hour, so I'd respond $14. Let's say I was actually paid an hourly rate at all 3 farms. Then I would have to respond with the lowest and highest hourly rate that I was paid. How many employers paid you a bonus? This question covers the bonus amount, unit, and frequency of payment. Let's say 2 employers paid me a bonus. I would enter 2 and continue to enter the minimum 50 cents per hour and the maximum $1 per hour. Note that the bonus can take the form of a per hour or per unit, like a lug, or a lump sum at the end of the season. In addition, we are asking how often the bonus was paid. For this example, I was paid on a weekly basis. Let's keep in mind the questions are about information since October 2015. How many employers required you to pick a certain amount of cherries in a day, meaning they had a productivity standard? A productivity standard means your employer requires you to pick a certain amount of fruit per day as a condition of continued employment. Only one of the farms I worked at required me to pick a certain amount per day, so I'd respond 1. The next question is a follow-up question. What was the amount of cherries your employer required you to pick each day? Where I worked, my employer required me to pick 14 lugs of cherries per day to remain employed at that particular farm. These questions are about experience requirements. That is, did you need to have prior experience in order to be hired? The first question asks how many non-H-2A employers had an experience requirement. The key thing to remember is that this question is to respond for those employers who did not hire temporary H-2A workers. For the example we've been using, all the 3 employers I worked for hired H-2A workers, so I would answer none and skip the question about the amount of experience required. Now we're on to the last questions of the survey. These questions ask about the availability of family housing. How many employers provided housing for your non-working family members? This question is not asking if just you were provided housing, but also housing was available for your non-working spouse and/or children. One of the employers I worked for provided housing for my family, so I would respond with 1. A follow-up question asks how many employers provided family housing free of charge. Basically, free family housing means, well, free. Workers and their families are allowed to live in this housing free of charge. For the example that we've been using, I did have to pay a small fee for housing my family, so I would respond with none. That's it. I want to re-emphasize a few points before winding down this webinar. First, this webinar serves as an example on how to fill out the survey. The wages and practices for this fictional example may be different from where you worked. Please fill out the survey as it reflects wages and employment practices where you worked. Second, this webinar walks you through the web version of the survey. Please remember that the survey will also be available via phone and text. The University of Washington will be contacting you with additional information if you have been selected to participate in the survey. Thank you for your time and participation in the 2016 Seasonal Agricultural Workers Survey.